There are lessons so big that they can't help but teach us. Blizzard listened to us. Dragonflight is their answer. They welcomed us home. That's what their marketing attempted to capture. Do you remember this picture of a broken Hearthstone? I think that's how the end of Shadowlands made us feel. It was broken. There was no returning home. Warcraft felt alien and dead. Many factors led to the last two expansions feeling this way, with the story direction at its core. The lore wasn't great, but this video is less about that. I'm here to talk about the future, and if they bring the Warcraft-like stuff, then the lore will feel back on track. Let's forget Metzen rejoining the team, and focus instead on what is being built right now. And let's pay the bills with today's sponsor. Us and our newly revamped Patreon loot, which for the first time ever has got a journal. Yeah, we actually have a custom notebook for this month, which I'm super hype about. We've actually also revamped quite a lot of what we're doing with the loot. So in addition to the notebook, you also get this beautiful lantern pin. I cannot wait to get these in. They look so goddamn awesome. So the lantern pin and some really cool art that is part of a special project. But yes, quite a lot of new things, and they will be, they'll be on our Patreon. So if you subscribe on our loot tier through the end of this month, you will get that, in addition to a bunch of other goodies too. You can check it out down below. Thanks for supporting us, and let's get to the video. Their narrative design is more clear. Quest text, character gossip, events, broadcast text, all layered together. Story feels more alive than before, and that's evident from when we land on the waking shores. A band of explorers on the edge of an ancient land. We see the proto-drakes soaring around the cliffs as we see the other faction disembark in the distance. When we arrived at Wingrest, one of the first things we did was sign our name in a welcome ledger, highlighting, of course, that nobody has put their name in that thing in thousands of years. It kind of feels quite new. This was the perfect time to get to know the Draconid Sendrax. A little bit annoying and untrained, but clearly with heart, and an earlier casualty than one would have expected. And then we extend this out to the rest of the Isles, meeting the Khans of the Muruk Centaur, having to understand the role of each clan, and then the game at multiple points quizzing us to make sure that we are indeed respecting their culture. Side quests, though, are a true highlight of this expansion, from spending time with a dwarf to soak up the sights, to assisting a goblin ornithologist and her apprentice Drakthir in saving the native blue-feathered rocks. There's quests that offer some unforgettable experiences. Some are even downright hilarious, like the mad Mordragon, the Crystal King who becomes so dehydrated he thinks the cave he's in is in fact his kingdom. These quests are delightful little detours that help paint that broader picture, and they are literally everywhere. Even your UI. Did you receive these free coins in your adventure guide? Because if you've been diligent, and you read through it every week, you'll have earned a small amount of money as a random reward for engagement, but on the 5th week, you will have received the Shadow Scrawled Coin, which comes with a mysterious message from a mysterious individual who's been leaving us this money. The message is unsigned, but the sender expresses gratitude for following our adventures. Put a few things together and we can then only assume that this money is in fact from Shadreen, once again making us unwitting players in the Void Ethereal's plan. And this little detail with the adventure guide. Whenever that lore does come back into the game, it will be very relevant and it will be satisfying that we paid attention to it now. This narrative weaves its way through every element of the game. But we're here to talk about lore, so let's talk about the big stuff. Hanging over the entire story of the Isles is the legacy of the dragons. Warcraft 2 and Day of the Dragon set the stage for dragons to become a cornerstone of the Warcraft universe. In vanilla, they were almost mythical NPCs. In Cataclysm, the lore reached its peak with the Hour of Twilight. Dragonflight then had many years of lore to draw from. Kelagos and the Sunwell, Alexstrasza and the Red Dragons, the Horde, the Second War, the Fall of Deathwing. Each flight had stories that spanned Azeroth and were essential to some of the most significant quest chains the game's ever seen, like the Scepter of the Shifting Sands or Quell Dalar. These stories touched on the very core of how Azeroth works. And this is one of the reasons why I'm starting to find the lore to be more captivating. because by the time we've arrived in the Isles, the dragons have all been in dire straits. The black dragons are few in number, the blues were scattered, the bronze are a bit in the brink, the greens are constantly having to fight with the nightmare, we've got the red dragons faring basically no better. So Blizzard's theme of renewal, then, has been a way for them to reinstate Dragonkind in the Warcraft universe, but to do so within the game, which is a massive contrast to their past, where it's been like, Warcraft 2 plus books. Yes, we have had dragon stories within World of Warcraft, but the big ones have often not been in World of Warcraft. Which kind of means that so much of the dragon lore will just bounce off players. And that's just why this re-establishing of them makes perfect sense. Really, this is how you continue a story when you feel like you've kind of exhausted the source material. You don't delve into the past and alter what's important to people. You go to the past, you recognize it, and then you take the next step. And finding the right balance of all of this has been the challenge. With Dragonflight, I think they've went to the past, and they've successfully taken it a step forward. Very much unlike how Shadowlands felt, where it kind of just did like they went to the past and then totally changed the context of it in order to sort of be cool. But it all just made us feel a little bit foolish for having cared in the first place. So this expansion's way of doing things, significantly better. But are our villains good? Well, the Incarnates are not as dangerous as Sargeras as far as big threats go. However, their motivations are pretty clear. Kill the Aspects, remove the Titans and their servants from Azeroth. They've also been effective in a way that hasn't totally relied on centuries of scheming that we've magically only just found out about. The writing team had obviously a lot of dragon lore to draw from, and they easily could have went with another Aspect turning evil story. They could have introduced one of the established but not yet seen in-game villains like Chromatus, but instead, they've decided to create a new foundation for the future stories. So now we have villains like Iridikron, who appears to be the closest enemy to Galakrond that we've ever seen. I mean, there is almost an assumption that we would have to fight Galakrond in Dragonflight, because realistically, what dragon thing is as threatening as Galakrond? The team's actually done their job then and created a threat without literally dragging Galakrond's body from the ground. The one Aspect story that does loom, though, obviously, is Morozond. But it doesn't feel like a traditional Aspect turning evil story like with Malygos, but instead a bit deeper. The villains have subtlety that makes their lore land interesting. There is the idea that Morozond may not entirely be a bad guy, or at the very least, that we may not be on opposite sides. We, of course, then mix that in with what happened to Chromie and Eternus in Thaldraszus, and you just kind of wonder, where will they go? Will this be as plain and simple as we thought? And then the Primalists. Yeah, it does kind of seem like the dragons are kind of slaves to the Titans, or they're very much drinking the Kool-Aid. Even though we've always viewed the Titans as great beings, maybe it's about time we started paying attention to what our antagonists have to say. That's kind of the major difference. I never wanted to, or I think many people, they didn't want to listen to Sylvanas' ego-boosting speeches about freeing us all, or the Jailers, where of course we only get his own justification for his actions, sort of, in his final words. Here's the thing, the Titans are not evil. We don't think they're evil. I mean, look at Tyr, he's a beacon of light and self-sacrifice, embodying all that, say, Uther would be. What we're doing is trying to understand the motivations of the Titans through their keepers and their interpretation of the path of the Titans. Odin declared that a certain history of Azeroth should be recognized. That doesn't include anything of value ever coming from the Black Empire. And that raises a lot of questions about what he meant, but it all makes sense within the established lore. Or the idea that Tyr wanted to, help order the minds of the dragons, nudge them in the right direction, so that they would naturally be aligned with the path of the Titans. Now, these raise questions that make us think about and reconsider what we thought about the Titans. But the bit at its core is that this knowledge is not coming from Al-Farim, or some other emotionless robot in space that we've never heard of before. It's coming from Tyr, who we've known about for a long time, a being of intellect and valor, and in some ways we really did think compassion, in addition to, being a being that works for the Titans. learning it all through him? Well, I think that's exactly how it should be done. To what end, though? What are the mysteries? And this is where they approach the whole idea of mystery a bit differently. There's kind of two layers of mysteries in the Isles. There's the stuff we're getting on the surface, like what's the deal with Tyr? What will we find out once we recover his memories from the Time Ways? And then there's the stuff that just happens while we're rampaging through a quest, like when we happened to meet N'Zoth in the past and found that he recognized us as his future killers. I mean, both mysteries are hammering at the same problem, but they're operating on two levels. And that kind of helps us with that feeling of, oh, there's no more mystery left in Warcraft. Oh, you've mined out the games. You can only do Warcraft 3 for so long. Because there is still mystery left. But I think the point is we've came a long way from the days of Wrath of the Lich King. How do we get that feeling of mystery back in? Because it's what made the whole Lich King adventure feel so grand. I mean, back then, the Titans were these highly mysterious beings, akin to literal gods who had once walked the earth and given, rise to our races. The dwarves, the only ones who properly paid attention to them until we discovered literal old gods everywhere. We even had to fight Algalon, which was completely insane. Then us players were going around drawing pentagrams over Azeroth, trying to find out the location of future old gods. It was crazy. There was so much mystery. But now, we've defeated those old gods. We've met literally the Titans. We have solved some mysteries that maybe had no right to ever be answered, like the Nathrezim corrupting Sargeras. This feeling of everything's answered. And the only new question Blizzard tried to ask us was, what are the first ones? What's it all about? And I mean, okay, you could do something with that, and Sereth Mortis was actually a pretty nice zone, but man, it just didn't land for all the reasons we've talked about for years. But when I look at Dragonflight, it is full of mystery, but it's mystery that's like tied to characters that we know and blocks of history that we know we didn't know about, right? And then yes, there is the new, like Neltharion creating the Drakthir, and why did he choose to preserve them in storage rather than destroy them? Okay, well, I want to learn more about Neltharion. That's fun. Ties into the new race. Okay, this is a good example of expanding the lore. We've got the motives behind the infinite Dragonflight, and the perception of primalist magic as being evil, which is then a bit weird because, well, seemingly it's elemental and comes from Azeroth. How do we piece this all together, especially when we seemingly have been walking the path of the Titans? Or maybe that's only one path that we could walk. Additionally, we have the cave paintings depicting the Jarradine using lava baths to gain the power they needed to fight the aspects, potentially indicating a sort of elemental origin for maybe the giants or the Vrykul. And there's so much, there's so much going on there. Even, where are their elders? Why do they want to get to their elders so much if their elders are so mysterious and are powerful? The way that we even find out that, the Jarradine are only allied with the Primalists because that will help them find their elders, and that the Jarradine fully intend to betray Iridicon and the Primalists once they find their elders. What is going on there? The influence of old gods, of course, can be seen throughout, including the corruption of Galakrond by Yogg-Saron, and the whispers from the Black Locust, which, man, oh, you gotta do the side quests. They've got so much good stuff in them. But the whispers from the Black Locust, warning of the consequences of disobedience and then directing one to seek them below, whatever that means. In recent times, speculation has reignited surrounding the possibility of an additional old god. I loved having that discussion back in Legion. It's fun to have it again now. The return of Yashar, some people even see it as, and that just adds to the mystique surrounding all of this ancient lore. It feels really good again. And that's just, all you have to do is go back to Azeroth and actually treat things vaguely reasonably. Now, we've got to the biggest mysteries, but I do want to talk about a few of the things that we are questioning, that I'm questioning. A separate creation for the Centaur? The whole new origin story for the Centaur tells us that this race was actually common in the primal era of Azeroth, but the Maruk are the only survivors, and the Centaurs in Kalimdor came from a separate process. Yeah, that can feel a bit crowbarred in. Is there something more to learn there? And then, yeah, there's the whole Malfurion thing. Yes, he's taking a break from Azeroth for a while. Thankfully, they just didn't, they didn't just go and kill him. But I don't really think the Night Elf players were willing to kind of give up more just for Ysera's return. Now still, Steve has assured people that while Malfurion is in Ardenweald, that he will be healing, and, one day he'll return with renewed vigor. But it does kind of feel like that story is on hold, and I do feel like there is lingering business with the Night Elves, and I would like to see that be dealt with sooner rather than later, because canonically, it's been like, years, 5, 6, 7 years by this stage in in-game time since the burning of Teldrassil. I really think that by the end of this calendar year, by the end of these 6 patches, I really do want to see significant progress be made there. Because frankly, I think the game needs that black mark. It needs that mended, as best as can be done at least. There are a few other pieces scattered about, but the point here is that the bad things do feel like an exception to the rule of things generally being good, or like a little side detail that we shouldn't ignore, but also we shouldn't let distract us from the big picture, which is that the mysteries are actually being spun in a significantly more successful way. And that brings me to the big question, can Blizzard pull it off? Well, we're just at the beginning. There's a lot of this expansion to go. But already, so much good stuff has been established. The story flows through this beautiful environment. The villains actually feel pretty well paced and threatening in a believable, not too ridiculously big way. There is so much to do and experience besides that. Now, it does remain to be seen whether they can pull it off. But right now, it feels like the lore is back. It's all theirs to lose now, because actually, they've set up a really, really good position. Trying to work out what's coming next in 10.1 was actually a real joy. Pouring through the mysteries, risen or asked by this expansion, has actually been really interesting and fun. It has brought me back, or at least it's brought a degree of heart and relatability back to the types of speculations that I enjoy the most. So overall, it's a pretty happy time to be somebody who is into the Warcraft lore. Part of that is because stuff's going pretty good right now, and yes, of course, part of that is just because of the vast gulf in perceived quality between the last few years and where we're at now. So let's hope that the lessons have been learned, that the good trajectory does indeed be followed for this, really just for the rest of the game. Yeah, what do you think? What's your impression of the lore? Let us know down below, and I'll see you next time.